Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight we drift beyond time, where gods dream and stories remember their light. Beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, where the rivers of memory run silver and deep, there lies a silence older than the gods. It is the stillness before destiny moves, a place where time folds upon itself and listens. In that stillness, three shadows breathe: Ord, Verdandi, and Skuld, the Norns. Their fingers are pale as moonlight, their eyes carrying the reflection of three eternities. Ord, whose voice sounds like distant water, weaves the threads of what has been. Verdandi, whose hands are warm and steady, ties the knots of what is. Skuld, whose gaze burns like dawn through mist, spins the unseen threads of what will come. Around them, the roots of Yggdrasil hum softly, a sound like the heartbeat of the world. The great tree drinks from the well of fate, and its veins pulse with stories waiting to be born. Ord speaks first, her tone slow and deep. The well is full again. Verdandi looks into the water. It remembers too much. Skuld steps closer. Then it is time. They kneel around the loom of threads, a circle of light woven from roots and starlight. Each thread that rests upon it shimmers faintly, carrying the echo of countless lives. Gods, giants, mortals, and dreams, all awaiting their place within the weave. Ord's hand hovers above the loom. The past sleeps, but never dies. Verdandi ties a knot of gold and silver. The present breathes between its echoes. Skuld draws a new thread from the air itself, pale, glowing, fragile, and the future waits to remember. As she places the thread upon the loom, the air around them shivers. Time ripples outward, touching every realm. Asgard, Midgard, Niflheim, and beyond. In distant halls, gods pause. In shadowed caves, giants turn their heads. In mortal dreams, hearts quicken without knowing why. The Norns begin to weave. The loom hums softly, its sound deep and endless, like 1,000 lifetimes spoken at once. Ord sings first, a low hymn that tells of what has already been written. The first light, the birth of the gods, the fall of the first giant. Verdandi joins, her tone smooth and fluid, weaving presence into motion. Rivers, winds, breath. Then Skuld's voice, clear and sharp, rises like the edge of dawn, and the weave glows with threads not yet seen. Choices unmade, paths untouched. The water beneath them stirs. Visions form and vanish within its depths. A boy lifting a sword against the sun. A queen weeping over an empty cradle. A god walking into shadow for the sake of love. Each vision is a ripple, a breath, nothing more, yet everything depends on it. Verdandi's hand pauses. Some threads tremble. Ord nods slowly. The world is young. It does not yet know its weight. Skuld's lips curve faintly. Then let us teach it balance. She lifts a silver thread and ties it beside a dark one. light beside shadow, choice beside cost. The hum deepens, steady and slow. Fate finds its rhythm. Far above, the roots of Yggdrasil tremble, and a soft rain begins to fall. Not of water, but of memory. Each drop carries a moment that has not yet happened. When it touches the ground, the earth sighs, and something ancient begins to move. Ord leans close to the loom. It begins. Verdandi whispers, the first pattern. Skuld breathes out, the first prophecy. And so, beneath the tree that holds the worlds, fate itself awakens, woven not from command, but from breath, patience, and remembering. Sleep, listener. In the next part, the Norns will look into the well, and the past will show them what even the gods have forgotten. Beneath Yggdrasil's roots, the air shimmered like breath upon still water. The loom of fate was quiet now, its glow fading into the deep silence of the Well of Ord, the place where all memory rests. The Norns stood at its edge, their reflections shifting and blending across the silver surface. The water was not calm, yet it did not move. It simply was, the stillness between two heartbeats, the pause before remembrance. Ord knelt first, her ancient eyes half-lidded. "It calls," she murmured. "The past remembers itself." Verdandi stepped beside her, laying her hand upon the surface. Ripples spread, faint and luminous, spiraling outward like threads unspooling through time. "It feels heavier than before," she said. "So many memories have gathered." Skuld did not kneel. She watched the ripples with sharp, bright eyes, her gaze reflecting both curiosity and caution. "Every thread we spin falls back into this well," she said softly. "The more we weave, the deeper it grows." Ord's voice was low, almost a chant. "Then let us listen." The well deepened, not downward but inward, and the reflections began to change. Across its mirror surface, visions flickered like candlelight. The first frost melting on creation's edge, the birth of the sun from fire and breath, the laughter of gods who had not yet known sorrow. Ord's fingers traced the light upon the water. The past does not die. It sleeps beneath the noise of living. Verdandi leaned closer. "And when it dreams, we remember." Within the well, scenes of the 9 realms unfolded. Asgard gleaming like dawnlight, Midgard trembling with the pulse of mortal hearts, Jotunheim echoing with the roars of forgotten giants. Yet between all these visions, there were moments even the gods had forgotten. A tear that became a river, a whisper that became a storm, a promise that never found its voice. Skuld watched in silence. "The threads blur," she said. "Past and present twist together." As the Norns gazed deeper, the well began to sing. A low, resonant hum that carried through the roots of Yggdrasil. The tree trembled faintly, its leaves stirring in realms far above. Even the gods felt it, a memory pressing against their dreams. In the halls of Asgard, Odin paused mid-thought. A vision crossed his mind. a glimpse of 3 women beneath the tree, weaving light into eternity. He felt the pull of that sound in his chest and whispered, "The Norns are working again." Back beneath the roots, Verdandie's reflection shimmered. "It remembers him too," she said softly. Ord's hand stilled. "It remembers all who seek to see." The water's glow deepened, turning the color of ancient silver. From its depths rose a faint image, a face of light and shadow, neither god nor mortal. Its eyes were mirrors, reflecting countless lives. It spoke no words, but its silence carried a question. Who remembers the remembers? The Norns exchanged a glance. For a moment even they were still. Skuld's voice broke the quiet. "The well watches us as we watch it." Ord smiled faintly. "It must. Otherwise, how would it know it exists?" The face faded. The ripples softened. The water grew still once more, but the memory remained. Around them, the air shimmered as if holding its breath. Verdandie exhaled slowly. "It shows us everything, but never the end." "There is no end," Ord said. "Only pattern." "And choice," whispered Skuld. "Always choice." The well's surface dimmed to black, and for a long moment there was nothing but the sound of the world's roots drinking. Above, unseen, stars trembled, as though remembering they too were once reflections. Then Ord rose. "The well is full. It is time to weave again." Verdandie nodded. "Let us carry what it has shown." Skuld lingered a moment longer. Her eyes remained upon the water, where the faint outline of her own reflection blurred into darkness. "The future waits below," she murmured, "and someday it will look back." They turned from the well. Behind them the water sighed, not in grief, but in promise. The well of Ward was silent again, but the air beneath Yggdrasil trembled. The Norns stood before their loom, its frame woven from roots, its strings glimmering with light drawn from the well's memory. The moment had come to weave. Ord moved first, her fingers slow and deliberate. From the well she drew threads of deep blue and silver, the past vast and calm. Each strand shimmered with the weight of memory. The first dawn, the song of Ymir's blood, the breath that gave life to men. She wove them into the base of the tapestry, strong and patient as stone. Verdandie followed. Her threads glowed softly, gold, green, and crimson, the color of living moments of choice and motion. She worked with steady rhythm, her fingers keeping pace with the pulse of the world above. "This is the breath between what has been and what will be," she murmured. "The heartbeat of now." Skuld waited. Her hands hovered over the loom, but she did not yet move. Her eyes burned with unseen light, reflecting futures not yet born. The air around her shimmered faintly, the sound of tomorrow stirring. Ord glanced toward her. "The threads will not balance without you." "I know," Skuld said quietly, "but each time I touch them, they change." That is their nature, Verdandi replied. And yours. With a slow breath, Skuld reached forward. From the air itself, she drew new threads, pale and weightless, yet vibrating with hidden strength. They were the color of lightning before it strikes, of thought before it becomes word. As she placed them on the loom, the fabric of fate began to hum. A deep tone that filled the cavern like the heartbeat of creation itself. Ord whispered, "The gods are watching." Far above, in Asgard, Odin stood at the edge of his great hall. He could feel the pull beneath the world, the weaving beginning again. The wind stirred, and for a moment he thought he heard their voices. "What are they making?" asked Frigg softly beside him. Odin's one eye turned toward the horizon. "The pattern that holds us." Back below, the Norns continued their work. Each movement echoed across the realms. Every thread a story, every knot a choice. A streak of thunder rippled through the loom. Thor's thread, strong and wild, glowing with stormlight. Verdandi tied it beside one woven from shadow and fire. Loki's, unpredictable and bright with cunning. Between them, a third thread shimmered faintly, golden white. The balance between chaos and order, the breath of their world. Ord's hands slowed. "These are heavy fates," she murmured. Verdandi nodded. "The gods carry their own storms." Then came the darker threads, the ones spun from silence and inevitability. Skuld wove them last, her movements precise, her gaze distant. The threads pulsed faintly with deep violet light, the color of endings not yet spoken. Verdandi watched her closely. "You hesitate." Skuld's voice was almost a whisper. "Because this one trembles before I touch it." She lifted the faintest of threads, so thin it seemed like air. But as she brought it toward the loom, the air around them darkened. The light of the well flickered. Even the roots of Yggdrasil seemed to still, listening. Ord frowned. "What thread is that?" Skuld's eyes gleamed. "The one that waits beyond the gods." For a moment, the loom stopped singing. Silence filled the cavern like a held breath. The three sisters stared at the shimmering thread that seemed to pulse with its own will. Neither past nor future, neither light nor shadow. Verdandi reached out but stopped halfway. "You cannot weave what is not yet ready." Skuld smiled faintly. "And yet, it has already begun." Then the light returned. The loom shone brighter than before. Threads of every color crossed and knotted, binding gods and mortals alike. The tapestry pulsed with quiet life, each breath of the Norns giving it motion. Ord leaned close. "It grows stronger." Verdandi smiled. "Because it breathes." Skuld looked upon her work. "And because even endings are alive." They stepped back. Before them the tapestry stretched endlessly. A living map of all that was and would be. Upon its surface shimmered the shapes of gods, stars, rivers, and hearts. Some glowed bright, some flickered faintly. All were bound, Verdandi turned to her sisters. And what of the last thread? Skuld's gaze lingered on the edge of the loom, where a single strand of darkness still waited, untouched. It is not for us to weave, she said, only to remember. The well's reflection dimmed. Above them, the tree side, a sound like wind moving through ages. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. Ord spoke softly. The gods are woven, the pattern holds. Skuld closed her eyes. For now, above the well of Ord, the roots of Yggdrasil quivered as though stirred by a dream. The loom beneath them still sang, its threads glowing softly in the eternal dark. The tapestry had grown vast, a living map of gods and mortals, bound in quiet motion. But one thread trembled. Skuld noticed it first. Her gaze sharpened. It moves against us, she whispered. Ord's fingers paused upon the loom. Impossible. Verdandi leaned closer, her eyes narrowing. It does not wish to be woven. The thread shivered again, faint at first, then stronger. It pulsed like a heartbeat, golden and wild. Across the tapestry, small ripples spread, distorting the patterns around it. Threads that once sang in harmony began to murmur with uncertainty. Ord frowned. Which life does it bind? Skuld's hand rose, hovering above the glowing weave. Odin. A silence fell heavy across the chamber. The well's waters dimmed to shadow. Verdandi exhaled slowly. He feels the weight of his own story, Ord murmured, and wishes to escape it. Far above, in the golden halls of Asgard, Odin stood alone beneath the Allfather's throne. The air around him shimmered with unseen threads, faint glimmers of light crossing every corner of the realm. Though his eye was fixed upon the horizon, his mind was turned inward. He felt it, the pull of destiny, the gentle tightening of the pattern. He spoke softly, though no one was there to hear. I see your weave, sisters of fate. I feel it in my blood, in the wind, in every dream. But I will not be ruled by it. He drew his spear, Gungnir, and lowered its tip to the ground. The moment it touched the floor, a deep vibration echoed through the roots of the world. The loom below stirred. Ord's voice trembled. He calls to the threads. Verdandi's eyes darkened. He forgets that to change fate is to pull against the whole. In the hall of the gods, the air cracked with thunder. Odin raised his hand, and the runes he had carved from sacrifice began to glow along his skin. He whispered the first spell ever meant to rewrite what was written. I do not break your weave, he said. I only ask to see beyond it. The golden thread shone brighter. Beneath Yggdrasil, the Norns felt its resistance. A fierce, defiant will rising through their work. The loom strained, creaking like ancient wood in a storm. Threads near it began to fray. Enough, Ord commanded. He will undo the balance. But Skuld's eyes gleamed with quiet fascination. No, let him see what waits beyond. Verdandi shook her head. He does not know the cost. Skuld's whisper was almost kind. He will. Odin's vision burned white. The tapestry opened before his inner sight. Vast, infinite, alive. He saw the threads of gods, mortals, and stars, all bound to one another. He saw every beginning tied to an ending, every choice shadowed by consequence. And then, at the farthest edge of the weave, he saw something the Norns had hidden even from themselves, a dark, silent strand, coiled like a serpent at the root of time. He reached for it. The loom screamed. Beneath the tree the Norns staggered. Threads snapped and reformed. The well's surface rippled violently, spilling light across the cavern. For a moment, time faltered, past and future twisting into one blinding instant. Ord's voice broke through the chaos. He touched the end. Verdandi grasped the frame of the loom. We must bind it before it unravels. Skuld stood perfectly still. Her eyes glowed faintly as she whispered, "It cannot unravel. It has only begun." In Asgard, Odin fell to one knee, his breath ragged. The runes along his arms dimmed, then faded. He had seen too much. The serpent thread coiled in his vision once more, whispering a single truth, that even gods must end. He lifted his gaze toward the unseen sisters below. "I understand," he murmured. "Fate is not a prison. It is a mirror." Below, Ord began to reweave the trembling thread. Verdandi steadied the loom. Skuld reached for the air above it and drew a single silver strand, new, luminous, and calm. She tied it gently beside Odin's. "The pattern heals," Verdandi sighed. Ord nodded. "He has learned." Skuld smiled faintly. "And so have we." The loom quieted. The well's waters stilled. Yet one ripple remained, faint but endless, echoing through the roots of all realms. Ord looked into the reflection. "He will seek again." Skuld's voice was almost a song. "And one day, he will find what waits at the end of the thread." Verdandi whispered, "And when he does?" Skuld's eyes shimmered with distant light. "Then the weaving will begin again, from silence." The loom had quieted, but silence did not mean peace. Beneath Yggdrasil's roots, the air shimmered with invisible motion. The tapestry still glowed, but faintly now, as though recovering from a wound. Across its threads, the echo of Odin's defiance moved like a ripple through still water, soft yet unending. Ord's hands trembled slightly as she touched the threads. "It hums with disobedience," she said. Verdandi's gaze was steady, her tone calm. "It hums with awakening." Skuld said nothing. Her eyes were fixed on the far edge of the tapestry, where the light dimmed into shadow. The threads there had begun to shift, weaving themselves in ways that even her fingers had not guided. "The pattern changes," she murmured. Ord frowned. Without us. Verdandi nodded slowly. Fate has learned to weave itself. Above, in Asgard, the gods stirred in uneasy dreams. The halls glowed with restless light. Thor turned in his sleep, his hand tightening around his hammer as if answering an unseen call. Frigg dreamed of a silver thread coiling around her son's heart. Loki awoke without reason, his mind filled with whispers that were not his own. And Odin did not sleep. He sat at the edge of Valaskjaf, his eye turned toward the void beyond the stars. The vision he had touched still burned behind his sight, the serpent thread, the whisper of an ending that was also a beginning. He breathed deeply, and the wind around him carried the faint sound of the loom beneath the world. Beneath the tree, the Norns continued their work. The threads glowed faintly in colors unseen by mortal eyes, hues of memory, choice, and silence. Yet among them, one thread now pulsed with a strange rhythm, its tone deeper than all the rest. Each time it moved, the entire tapestry shivered, as if something within it had begun to breathe. Ord whispered, "It grows louder." Verdandi's voice softened. "Every act of defiance becomes a song." "And songs," said Skuld quietly, "become storms." The air darkened. The light of the well deepened to a dim blue. Across the surface of the water, shapes began to form, visions born not from memory, but from what had been set in motion. They saw flames crawling across the sky, rivers turning to glass, a wolf's shadow devouring the moon. And beneath it all a heartbeat, not of one life, but of the world itself. Ord's expression hardened. "He has awakened the echo." Verdandi nodded. "The gods feel it in their dreams." Skuld closed her eyes. "It is not only gods." She reached toward the tapestry, tracing a trembling thread of silver that ran between realms, from Asgard to Midgard, from divine thought to mortal breath. The echo does not stop at the heavens. It passes through every soul that remembers. "The mortals?" Ord asked. "They are too young." "Not young," Skuld whispered. "Just listening." In a quiet village beneath the northern lights, a mortal woman awoke from a dream of fire and waves. She did not know the names of gods or the language of fate, but her hands shook with the memory of a song she had never heard. Across the world, others stirred in the same moment. Shepherds, kings, wanderers, their hearts beating in time with a rhythm older than their blood. The Norns felt it all. Verdandi looked at her sisters. "The weave is no longer ours alone." Ord's voice was heavy with both wonder and sorrow. "Then perhaps it never was." Skuld's gaze turned toward the far edge of the tapestry, where a single black thread coiled like smoke, thin, quiet, and infinite. "Every echo leads back to its source," she said, "and this one will return to him." "Who?" Verdandi asked, though she already knew. "Odin," said Skuld, "and through him all of us." The tapestry trembled again. For a moment, The sisters saw their own reflections upon it. 3 faces woven into the fabric of the world, their eyes shimmering like stars caught in a storm. The echo deepened, filling the cavern with a sound like a heartbeat too large to belong to anything mortal. Verdandi reached out to steady the loom. What happens if the echo becomes a voice? Skuld's answer was almost a whisper. Then even fate will have to listen. Above them, Yggdrasil sighed, a long, low sound that passed through every realm. The gods awoke, the mortals stirred, and the stars themselves seemed to flicker in time with the unseen pulse of defiance. Ord drew in a slow breath. We cannot stop it. No, Skuld said softly. We must learn its song. The Norns looked to one another, their hands returning to the loom. With each movement, they wove both harmony and discord, knowing that one could not exist without the other. Far away, Odin watched the first dawn break upon the world. For the first time, he did not seek to change the thread. He only listened and heard, faintly, the sound of his own heart beating in time with the world's. Ord's hands trembled. It speaks of freedom. Verdandi nodded. Of awakening. Skuld stepped forward, her gaze steady. Of what comes after fate. The tapestry's light grew brighter. Gold, silver, black, and white intertwining into something beyond color. The voice pulsed again, echoing through every fiber of the weave. Asterisk, all things are bound, but the bound thing dreams. Asterisk. Asterisk, dreams become patterns. Patterns become gods. Asterisk. And gods return to dream. In that moment the Norns understood. The loom had become more than a tool of destiny. It was the memory of creation itself, a mirror that reflected both the maker and the made. The act of weaving had given it life, and in that life it had learned to speak. Ord whispered, "Then we are no longer its keepers." Verdandi smiled faintly. "We are its echoes." Skuld's eyes gleamed with distant light. "And its future." The loom quieted. Threads of every realm shimmered one last time, then slowly began to fade, not into darkness, but into the soft glow of dawn. The well of Ord brightened, its waters turning clear as glass. Above, the roots of Yggdrasil sighed with relief. Far above, Odin stood at the edge of Asgard and felt the last ripple pass through him. He looked toward the horizon where night met day. "So," he whispered, "even fate must sleep." Beneath the world, the Norns stood hand in hand. The tapestry before them was gone, yet its image lingered in their minds, eternal, endless, alive. Verdandi spoke softly. "Do you hear it still?" Ord nodded. "Always." And Skuld, with eyes that saw beyond the end, smiled faintly. "The loom has not ended. It has only become quiet enough to dream." The air filled with the faint hum of new beginnings, of moments not yet born, of stories waiting to be remembered. The Norns closed their eyes, and the cavern was filled with light. The loom sleeps, the world dreams. The air beneath Yggdrasil was still, but the stillness was alive. The loom no longer sang its soft, rhythmic tune. Instead, the silence itself vibrated, as if the world were waiting for something it could not name. The Norns stood before their tapestry, and for the first time since the dawn of creation, they did not move. The weave shimmered faintly. Threads of light and shadow pulsed in unison, alive with a quiet rhythm that felt like breath. Ord's voice was barely more than a whisper. It has learned to listen. Verdandie's gaze softened, and now it waits to speak. Skuld's eyes reflected the shimmer of the threads. It has been speaking all along. We were simply too loud to hear. They stepped closer to the loom. The patterns glowed brighter, revealing layers they had never seen before. Threads beneath threads, stories beneath stories. It was not just the fates of gods or mortals that lived there, but the song of existence itself. Every choice, every memory, every breath of the cosmos was woven in that endless tapestry. Then, without warning, the loom moved. The Norns did not touch it. The threads stirred on their own, flowing across one another in perfect rhythm. A low hum filled the chamber, deep and resonant. It was not the sound of hands at work. It was a voice. It spoke without words, and yet they understood. Ord bowed her head. It remembers us. Verdandie's breath caught. No, it is us. The hum deepened, vibrating through the roots of Yggdrasil, into the well of Ord, and upward into every realm. The tree shuddered. The gods looked to the sky, and the mortals felt a sudden weight in their hearts, as though the world itself had drawn a breath. The voice was not sound, but thought, not speech, but memory. I am not your creation. I am the space between your hands. You wove the threads, but I am what they became. The Norns fell silent. Even the well's water stopped moving. Ord's hands trembled. It speaks of freedom. Verdandie nodded. Of awakening. Skuld stepped forward, her gaze steady. Of what comes after fate. The tapestry's light grew brighter. Gold, silver, black, and white intertwining into something beyond color. The voice pulsed again, echoing through every fiber of the weave. Asterisk, all things are bound, but the bound thing dreams. Asterisk. Asterisk, dreams become patterns. Patterns become gods. Asterisk. And gods return to dream. In that moment the Norns understood. The loom had become more than a tool of destiny. It was the memory of creation itself, a mirror that reflected both the maker and the made. The act of weaving had given it life, and in that life it had learned to speak. Ord whispered, "Then we are no longer its keepers." Verdandie smiled faintly. "We are its echoes." Skuld's eyes gleamed with distant light. "And its future." The loom quieted. Threads of every realm shimmered one last time, then slowly began to fade, not into darkness, but into the soft glow of dawn. The well of Ord brightened, its waters turning clear as glass. Above, the roots of Yggdrasil sighed with relief. Far above, Odin stood at the edge of Asgard and felt the last ripple pass through him. He looked toward the horizon where night met day. So, he whispered, even fate must sleep. Beneath the world, the Norns stood hand in hand. The tapestry before them was gone, yet its image lingered in their minds, eternal, endless, alive. Verdandi spoke softly. Do you hear it still? Ord nodded. Always. And Skuld, with eyes that saw beyond the end, smiled faintly. The loom has not ended. It has only become quiet enough to dream. The air filled with the faint hum of new beginnings, of moments not yet born, of stories waiting to be remembered. The Norns closed their eyes, and the cavern was filled with light. The loom sleeps, the world dreams, and above the silence, a voice like the whisper of wind spoke one last truth. Not to the gods, not to the Norns, but to you, listener. Asterisk, every breath you take is a thread, every dream a weave. You are part of the tapestry, and the loom remembers you. Asterisk. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth.